Marcus had learned to move like the city itself, quick, unobtrusive, always scanning, always ready. He worked the dinner shift at Lovard, a quiet high-end restaurant tucked behind glass and ivy where billionaires and board members liked to dine without being stared at. Marcus loved the work, the rhythm of trays, the small victories of a perfectly timed pour, the way a customer's face softened when he anticipated what they wanted before they asked. On an unusually rainy Thursday evening, an older man sat at the far corner table beneath a solitary lamp. His posture was deliberate, his coat worn thin at the elbows. The maitre d' whispered the name Wallace Carrington. The room shifted. Patrons pretended not to look, but eyes found the table like iron to a magnet. Marcus approached with a warm, practiced smile. He took the man's order and brought water, describing the day's special in his usual calm manner. He noticed small things: the man's hands, calloused and faintly stained, the crinkled paper of a photograph tucked in his wallet, the way his eyes searched the room and settled nowhere. When Marcus spoke, the man didn't respond. He tapped the man's shoulder lightly. Still nothing. The maitre d' leaned close and mouthed, "He's deaf." Marcus felt a familiar click in his chest. His mother had taught at a school for the deaf when he was little. He'd learned ASL at home to help with tutoring. It wasn't a performance. It was family. Marcus signed, "Do you need help?" The man's eyes softened. He signed back, "Water." "Quiet. Wait." They settled into a small, private conversation in hand. It was ordinary at first: medication times, where to catch a cab, the confusion of loud phones. But what Marcus noticed was the old man spelled one name over and over. He folded the letters into his palm like a medallion. Time passed with the quiet music of plates and footsteps. Then Julian Carrington arrived, younger, mid-30s, tailored coat and an expression that read more like a press release than a son. He moved through the room with the self-possession of someone who had learned to live under a public gaze. He approached his father quickly and spoke. "Sorry I'm late, Dad. Traffic." He didn't sign. Mr. Carrington attempted to sign to Julian. The son's face betrayed only obligation. He tried to read the hands, mouthing words that did not land. The old man unfolded a faded photograph and, with trembling fingers, spelled some again. He signed, "Lost. Forgive." At that moment, something private and seismic began to surface. Julian's hands trembled as he took the photo. Questions formed in his mouth. "Who is Sam?" he asked aloud. The old man's hands moved faster, spelling out a memory. A storm, a corner where a small boy had waited, a jacket given and then gone. He kept signing, "Forgive," like a rhythm he'd practiced in solitude. Julian's composure slipped. His eyes clouded with images he had kept folded away. Marcus did what he could. He stepped closer. He didn't perform textbook ASL. He used the language he knew, the hybrid signs stitched from a childhood neighborhood, plain and unadorned. He spelled dates, small landmarks, the outline of a memory in easy, patient gestures. Julian watched, and the armor he'd worn for years began to fall away. "I thought someone would find him," Julian said finally, voice thin. His hands tried to make the movements, but stalled. Mr. Carrington's reply was not scolding. He signed survival, the choices a man makes when everything asks for him to choose. "Forgive," he said. The restaurant held a sacred hush. Patrons lowered their voices. Marcus watched the son begin to learn the shape of his father's memories with hands he had rarely used for anything but buttons and wallets. Julian started signing, halting and then with more assurance, as the details settled into place. He promised to search, to make space, and to ensure his father would never be left against the noise of a world again. Julian took out his phone and, for the first time that Marcus had seen, attempted to use an app that would help translate. He fumbled with the settings, then with steadier resolve invited his father to live with him, to move into a place that had ramps and quiet rooms, to hire a full-time interpreter if necessary. He promised to find Sam, to seek out the boy whose ghost had sat between them for decades. Later, Julian sought Marcus out and offered him a job, not as a server but as a community liaison for the foundation he was starting on communication access for the deaf. Marcus declined politely at first, then accepted on his own terms. He wanted a schedule that allowed him to keep teaching, to keep walking the neighborhood he loved. Julian adjusted the role, and the two men, one who had once been a waiter and one who had once been a boy called Sam, began to work on making sure fewer people in their city would be left unheard. Marcus kept going to work. He noticed new faces among the regulars and new questions at the counter. Some people asked where he'd learned to sign. A mother asked him to teach her so she could speak to her grandfather. Marcus began a weekly class at a community center. He taught basics: how to get someone's attention gently, how to spell a name clearly, how to slow your hands when a person's fingers trembled. The room filled with neighbors who wanted to cross a small but vital divide. Months later, Marcus watched on a Sunday morning as Julian walked into the community center holding his father's hand. The billionaire's gait had become tentative but real. He moved through the room with the humility of a man learning to read again. Marcus introduced Julian to the small class and watched him sign, first clumsy, then purposeful, until the motions began to look like speech again. In time, Julian found Sam. He found the boy, a grown man now with a rough laugh and a scar across his lip, living 2 neighborhoods over. They met in a park, 2 lives stitched into the same fabric of past and future. There were awkward hugs and long silences, then, slowly, conversation, some spoken, some signed, that folded the missing years into a new beginning. People told the story as one of celebrity redemption. Marcus read headlines that called him the waiter who saved a family reunion. The labels were flattering but shallow. For Marcus, the moment that mattered had nothing to do with fame. It was the instant Mr. Carrington signed a single, precise motion his mother had taught him long ago, the sign for home, cupped hands coming together, and then the smallest of smiles. That smile was the only applause he needed. Not every moment after was tidy. Money did not undo years of absence overnight. The work of mending went on in small, steady ways. An interpreter hired for the house, Julian learning to slow and to listen, regular visits that turned into a new routine. Marcus accepted the community liaison role with an unshakable condition. His ties to the neighborhood must remain. He wanted the work to live where he'd first learned to use his hands, on stoops, in kitchens, and in rooms where people gathered without expectation. On slow nights Marcus polished the last wine glass and thought of the photograph in Mr. Carrington's wallet. He imagined the 2 boys on the stoop, arms around each other, a future not yet drawn. He signed to himself a phrase his mother had taught him: "Keep going." He meant it. He had been a waiter in a city of noise, and he had learned that listening often looks like learning another person's hands. That willingness, simple and stubborn, changed 3 lives that winter: a father, a son, and the waiter who had the courage to sign the first word.